It's Real Talk, Episode 5, Big Toy Movies, and I'm your host, Al the Movie Lion. On today's show, Jennifer Tyson helps me critique Greta Gerwig's global phenomenon, Barbie. Sid the Cinema Sloth returns to help me review Transformers. And Post Wrestling's Wei Ting flies from Toronto to construct an argument for the Lego Movie. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, and let's play! Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. One of the oddest, but no doubt most successful campaigns in Hollywood history to pit two films against each other in an opening weekend showdown designed to promote interest has to be 2023's $244+ million opening weekend box office, collected by Oppenheimer and Barbie. If you're counting ticket stubs, Barbie sold just shy of twice as many tickets as Nolan's 3-hour R-rated historical thriller. Although incredibly rare, there are toy movies that predate Barbie with big themes and strong ideas, but none of them capture the attention of a global audience quite like Greta Gerwig's modern classic. And that's what Barbie feels like, a return to form of a style of classical filmmaking lost to time. America Ferrera's character Gloria gives a monologue at the midway mark of the movie that summarizes the pressures of being a modern woman. But I think anyone listening would find what she's saying relatable, and that's coming from a lion. The more the film's characters, mostly consisting of toys, bang the drum of what it means to be a strong woman, the more they define what it means to be human, which is far from ideal. One of my closest friends, photographer and horticultural historian Jennifer Tyson, has come to my jungle dream house today, and I'm so glad she could make the trip. Hello, Barbie. Please, help yourself to any invisible drink you'd like.
Oh, thank you so much. Don't mind if I do.
Yes, we have plenty of it. I know you're a bit of a green thumb. How do you like the jungle here? We've got plenty of plants.
I think they're beautiful. I think they're lush. I think they're verdant. And as long as they're not invasive, they're all right by me.
Well, I can assure you, none of them are invasive. Most of them are fake, but there are a few pothos in here that are completely 100. Speaking of fake things, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, we're talking today about some plastic, about Barbie. Jen, what was your relationship like with Barbie? You know, as a little Jen growing up, did you have Barbies? Is it something you wanted? What was your relationship like with the brand?
I I had a fraught relationship with Barbie as I was going into sixth grade. It dawned on me that I'd never had a Barbie. I'd never wanted a Barbie. They were not my thing. And when I was going into school, into middle school, I realized this and I started to have an existential crisis. I realized that if I hadn't played with a Barbie by the time I was in middle school, that something was wrong with me and my development. And I needed to rectify the situation immediately. And so I asked my mom to drive us to the store. We went to the mall and I picked out a Barbie at random. The only deciding factor for me was, oh, she has dark hair. I have dark hair. I guess I'll get that one. I took it home.
Mhm.
I went through the motions. I took it out of the box, took the clothes off, put the clothes back on, put her back in the box, put her away, and said, all right, I did it. My childhood development is now complete. I'm okay to go to middle school now without having missed a major step. I don't know. I feel like maybe that's how ingrained the Barbie brand is
I mean,
into girls' minds, where you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't done it. Maybe I'm not ready to go on to the next step of adolescence without having done so.
first of all, yeah, I mean, well done, Mattel. I mean, you clearly have burned your way into the human experience to an extent that many young women out there are dealing with. I mean, I thought, Barbie was a heavy movie, but maybe it's just a common experience.
I was done. It
Okay.
was over, and I felt like I could move on to adolescence and move on from childhood.
In sixth grade, I take it was okay, generally speaking.
I mean, it was all right. I mean, as good as sixth grade can be. Let's just say it left a mark on me to the extent where I later became a middle school teacher because I related so much to what middle schoolers go through and how hard it can be. And I felt like if I was going to teach any age group, it had to be middle school. So I could almost like go back in time and be the teacher I wanted to have had.
That's
to all these kids. So yeah, it worked itself out. There was some sort of cyclical situation going on there.
But I will jump into things. We're going to talk about the movie now. We fast forward to 2023. Did you see Barbie in theaters? Were you excited to see it? I mean, clearly you did not have a shelf full of Barbies back at the house.
Right. I wasn't really excited to see it. I didn't have much of an interest other than the fact that it was a cultural phenomenon. And I wanted to be a part of this cultural phenomenon. And Greta Gerwig, Margot Robbie, like the cast was stellar. And I was like, okay, this is going to be better than I would anticipate, I'm sure. But the reason I actually went to the theater to see it is because my coworkers, who are super into Barbie, wanted to all get together, dress up in pink, dress up as Barbies, and go. Well, I didn't really do that. I mean, I wasn't really into that. Like I was
Sure, sure.
passable. Let's just say I was a passable Barbie. Went with them, and so it was that community feel with the girls, but I felt really I felt like I was back in early sixth grade days. Like,
Right.
do I do this? Is this really for me? I'm just gonna go with it. And
Sure.
I was really moved, just like so many other people were moved in the theater. It really hit a lot of points that I related to, that a lot of people can relate to. And I was really glad that I went, and I was glad that I went with them, with other women. So it was a good experience, but not one that I would have sought out on my own.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience in revisiting it. I did not go to the theater with a bunch of girls dressed as a Barbie. But upon my second watch, like I liked it the first time, but I liked it a lot more the second time and really walked away sort of appreciating it a lot more and kind of
Yeah.
more into it. Now, Jen, this is your first time in the jungle, the first time on the show. The way we do things here is we talk about five different categories. We start out with plot.
I will say I thought that the plot was a great one. It seemed feasible, somewhat plausible. The idea that, you know, there was some sort of otherworldly reason why she would be able to go into the real world. And then you see her journey into, does she feel like she wants to continue in this world? Does she not? That all resonated. It seemed familiar, so I could follow it. I thought it was good at her self-realization, realizing what the real world is and how that reflects back on Barbie Land and her life and the lives of, the other Barbies and the Kens. I thought the plot was well done. Greta, Margot, as a producer, I thought they did a great job of making it seamless and where you could really flow with it.
And I'm curious because, you talked about your albeit brief experience with Barbie as a girl. This very easily could have been a love story in a movie about Barbie and Ken getting together, and it clearly isn't. This is very much a movie about sort of female empowerment. This is a movie that is all about Barbie in particular, sort of gaining enough self-belief to sort of stand on her own and be her own woman, go from doll to woman. Um, in terms of how that ended, I mean, do you appreciate that? Especially, I mean, I feel like a lot of people probably saw it as subverting some expectations.
I thought it stuck the landing perfectly. I loved it. And I was really moved by it to tears, truly, both times, because especially towards the end, when you see this montage that she's envisioning after having talked with the creator, her creator, this dreamy montage of girls laughing, crying, embracing their mothers, really feeling the joys and depths of being a girl, being a woman. And I feel like it was after she saw that, the lows, but also the highs and the sisterhood. You see these depictions of women and girls with each other, supporting each other. And I feel like her seeing that sisterhood is what made her feel like she could be a real woman. She'd already experienced the depths of it to a certain extent and realized she could have that sisterhood outside of Barbie Land in a more meaningful way. And it was worth it for her to be a part of that reality And being a woman and having a sisterhood, many sisterhoods of my friends, I can absolutely relate to that and say that they are, I could see how envisioning that and experiencing that to a certain degree could make any toy want to be real, especially if she can be a real girl or a real woman with other women as a support for her.
Is it fair to say that she, in that montage, saw for the first time what she truly represented, what Barbie as a character represented, and that sort of
Mm,
allowed her to be whole? Because that's what I interpreted it as. And look,
mm.
obviously I'm a male lion, but we lions, there's pretty much only one lion in the pride. I'm surrounded by a lot of ladies over here, love them all.
Yeah, right.
Clearly, I didn't necessarily have the same emotional takeaway from that. I don't think it was designed to be that, but I don't know. I'm just curious. That's what I saw as like the kind of final part of the arc, especially with her meeting her creator. I looked at that as a sort of symbol of she's getting this final confirmation of what she represents. And I mentioned earlier the hero's journey. Classically, the hero's journey is sort of built around like an item or an object or something that the hero is after. And in this movie, I think that that is exactly what it's after. She's realizing this sense of self and this sense of purpose. And as a brand and a toy that's meant to represent every woman, what I interpret as that she was literally seeing that for the first time.
I think that is a really great take on it, especially when you consider the very famous now monologue by America Ferrera, where in which Margot Robbie, Barbie, is saying just before that, I feel like I'm not good enough for anything. She feels like a failure. She has that support from America Ferrera's character saying essentially, no, it breaks my heart to know that you feel like you're not good enough. Ha Being on the heels of that, experiencing what she could be a part of, I think absolutely understanding her purpose. And I think that's a great takeaway. Why not? Absolutely.
I feel like we could talk about the plot of Barbie all day.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna get a grade out of you, as is the case here. 1 out of 10.
I gotta say, I would probably give it a 9, in large part because of how, well, maybe this is going into the themes really, but the underlying themes that really work through the entire plot line. Yeah, even so, I would still give it a 9. I think it's a great plot. I think people of all ages and genders can relate to it, and some more deeply than others. And I think that is the mark of a successful plot.
Absolutely agree with that. Next up, we're going to talk about characters and performances. And what I want to, I'll tee it up by saying this. In the last episode of Real Talk, we talked about Spike Lee's early joints. One of them in particular was Do the Right Thing. I really love Do the Right Thing. And I think a lot of people, especially upon their first watch, realize that it's having a really difficult conversation, but it is an extremely entertaining movie. And what we didn't touch on while talking about the plot necessarily is how incredibly funny Barbie is. And I think there are going to be a lot of people out there, maybe a lot of guys who are afraid that there's going to be some heavy-handed message. This movie has ideas, but this movie is at all times hilarious.
I got to agree with you there. And on top of that, I'd forgotten about that because I was left with such an emotional reaction to it the first time I saw it, that when I was watching it the second time with my kin, um, I was laughing so hard, but also so enjoying him laughing so hard. He'd never seen it and he was loving it. So incredibly funny. Just the goofiness about it, too. It was goofy and silly, but super smart at the same time. So I feel like that's yet another reason why so many people could relate to it and really enjoy it.
I'm curious, what was your thoughts on the Ken character and then a little bit on the Alan character as well, sort of, diet Ken, if you will, Crystal Ken.
Crystal Ken, fantastic. Okay, well, I'll say first of all, the Alan character. Next to me in the theater when I'd seen it the first time, clarified like, oh, that was, the Ken that never really made it. And so then it was hilarious. And the fact that it was Michael Cera, I mean, come on, he makes anything funny. But also the makeup they put on him to make his eyes look so bizarre and doll-like was just fantastic. His deadpan delivery for things just kills me. So I love that they had him as a peripheral character, just like he was a peripheral toy back in the day. But as far as the actual main Ken, I mean, it's Ryan Gosling. He's so funny and just so charming. And I really loved the fact that they played upon his character being completely dependent on Barbie. Everything is dependent on her approval of him, and he makes his decisions based on that. And maybe this was on purpose. I feel like it must have been the role reversal that so many women traditionally have lived in that sphere
The bimbo.
around men, and will typically say, oh, I know, I just got lost in him, I dropped my friends and I started to like the things that he liked and do the things that he liked to do, and find themselves in a position that they never even expected they would be in. And so to
They
see,
become an accessory. They become the,
right.
yeah, not the side piece in the dating sense, but the kin to a Barbie. That's that. I totally appreciate what you're saying because I feel like he, in almost to an extent, for many years, what people maybe thought Barbie was, again, this pretty blonde kind of idiot bimbo. And so when you say role reversals, that's what I thought it was. It's just this perfect,
Hmm.
hilarious, like we're gonna make Ken what many people for decades probably thought the Barbie was.
Well, I gotta say, I love Issa Rae. She's one of my faves. And especially when she came down from the steps to blow the minds of the Kens and let them know, hey, we've taken over. And she lets out that, listen, MFers, this is what's going on. And they're like, what? Kate McKinnon's character and how she
Weird
delivered
Barbie.
it. She was the perfect person to cast for Weird Barbie. The fact that they even had a Weird Barbie, just genius. I felt like there were so many realistic portions of this movie that's so fantastical. And I know we'll probably talk about it later too, but I mean, come on. The cinematography, the set design, incredible. The colors, the vibrancy, just the otherworldliness of it. It really let you get into that toy world. Even for someone like me that's not, I would not gravitate to a toy type of movie. I mean, I didn't gravitate towards Barbie as a child, even. So it really let you do that. So I'm probably getting ahead of myself. But yeah, as far as the characters went, spot on all of them. Will Ferrell as the Mattel CEO. The fact that they even were able to include this whole Mattel CEO and all of his minions as a current day kind of
Parody of.
conversation piece. I couldn't believe it. I just thought, I can't believe Mattel is even letting this happen because it's a total spoof on them.
And I think that's really important, especially when you have a movie where a cynical viewer could very easily go, "This is just a toy movie. They just want us to go in there and fall in love with us more, so we go out and buy more toys." And there's a part of them that's absolutely correct, but there is more going on here than just that. 1 out of 10, Jen, what do you give the characters before we get into visual storytelling, which I'm excited to hear your thoughts on?
I got to give the characters a 10, especially if it's an ensemble grade. I mean, come on, between Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, the Knuff, I mean, just the song he sings, they're incredible, much less all the other cast members, just top notch. Got
Look,
me in the theater.
visual
Mhm.
storytelling. You mentioned earlier the set design. This has a very Bugsy Berkeley kind of old, Hollywood musical feel to it. I think the marriage of the classical filmmaking techniques really allows us to take this classic American brand and sort of, again, embrace it in a way that feels organic and feels classy and doesn't feel like cheap, shitty plastic. What about maybe when we're outside of Barbie Land and once we get into the real world? How did you feel about sort of when we're in Barbie Land? I even feel very comfortable. It felt like this is where we're supposed to be. When we're outside of Barbie Land, it kind of always feels off and it always feels wrong. Did you feel the same way?
I did. That's such an interesting point. I felt like, and I'd have to rewatch it to really see if this is true, but it felt like in the real world, other than in LA, but even in LA, when they say, they traded the neon of Barbie Land for the neon of LA. And so you see that LA scape And I'm thinking, yeah, that's true, but it's not as vibrant as I was even would even necessarily think of. They were the most vibrant ones in the area as they're rollerblading through the crowd. And I think maybe that was on purpose too, to show that it still would never compare with Barbie Land.
Right.
And then even when you get out of LA, well, out of that area of LA, things just seemed a little duller, a little more grayish or bluish in tone. And so maybe that's the part that was more purposeful. Yeah, I felt that definitely. And I will say also, just because I don't want to miss this, the transition between Barbie Land and the real world on their journey to it. I loved the montages that they had for the different modes of transportation, how they included those from, previous modes of transportation that people could actually buy over the years for
Yeah.
Barbie. But I loved the cutout imagery, classic Hollywood, in such a fun way that I kept wanting them to go back and forth so I could see that. And whenever I think of the movie, those transition scenes on their journey are the ones that stick out to me the most. That's what I'm picturing when I think of Barbie.
1 out of 10, Jen. Visual storytelling.
Oh, I mean, come on. It's got to be a 10. It's got to be. And so I'm even going to say Barbie the movie, 10 out of 10.
Use of Sound is up next. Barbie has original music, but it has this really funny, self-aware original music that's calling
Hmm.
attention to what's going on. And I mean, it's not just a soundtrack that's fun, which it has. It doesn't just have original music you can put on and listen to in the car, which it has, but it really does elevate this to a whole nother experience. Your thoughts on the use of sound?
Oh man, I have so many, but I'll start with the fact that I loved in the opening sequence when Barbie's getting ready and she's, getting ready for the day with the other Barbies, and you hear Lizzo singing, and it's great. And she's essentially singing, but she's narrating what they're doing. And then as the scene continues, you hear her say things like, you hear Lizzo sing things like, well, I was just singing right now when somebody kind of interrupts the song to have some
Did.
sort of verbal exchange in the movie. I loved it. I thought, well, if you're not listening, you're not really paying attention. But if you are listening, Lizzo's now another character in this movie through this song. And it continued that way. And I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. I also, I mean, everybody seems to love Billie Eilish's um, version of What Was I Made For?
Mm,
And I love it too. I love that you can hear it playing softly in the background at pivotal moments. In particular, when Barbie stumbles upon her creator, Ruth, in the kitchen that just happens to be behind a door in Mattel headquarters, and you see them having this heart to heart conversation, and the song is playing, the instrumental version of it is playing very softly in the background. I love when movies do that. I love when they tie it together and create that feel when one theme song just kind of runs throughout. There's just so much to it, but I love, and let me also say, I'm not a fan of that kind of, like, I was listening to more of the soundtrack today before this podcast, and I thought, yeah, these songs, the upbeat songs, aren't typically my thing. Like, they're what you might hear on the radio. I don't listen to the radio. I don't like it. It's not my thing. But in this movie, they make total sense, and I get them, and I appreciate them more because of how they're used throughout.
right. I'm curious, Jen. 1 out of 10. I have a feeling what I think you might give it, but I'm curious. 1 out of 10. What would you give the use of sound?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit lower on this one and go with just my own personal take on it. Probably a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
Just because the other songs as a whole, as fun as they may be, they didn't impact me in any way. To me, the overall sound is so generic these days that I'm like, besides Lizzo and Billie Eilish, the others, I'm just like, okay, they all sound similar to me
Sure.
in tone. Um, but I do appreciate that they are fun. For me, I'm gonna go with a 7 or an 8.
So is that
7.5.
7.5? All right, locking in the 7.5. Fair enough. Look, Greta, if you're listening, let us know in the comments how hurt you are by Jen. Um, Margot, I appreciate you. I'll reveal my score later, though. Don't worry. Uh,
Okay. Well, you can't win them all, as they know from the Academy Award nominations they got, and
I
the
mean, look, Gosling did sing a song, so I thought maybe that was an automatic 10, but it's good to know the Gosling bias is not present in on it. Look,
I'm
that's integrity,
remiss.
Jen Tyson. That's integrity, and I respect it.
Al, I gotta say, I might bump my score up a little bit to a 9 because I had totally spaced out on the Ryan Gosling song and how great
Wow.
it was.
It,
So
I
I
was
gotta
gonna,
bump it up.
are we going to a nine? The
We're going to
first
a
time?
9.
Wow,
We're going
first
to a
time
9.
in real
And
talk.
that's thanks to you.
That's what I'm here for. Look, I was surprised because it's one of my favorite songs in the movie. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a very late addition, maybe even his idea. There's definitely a story there. I remember hearing
Ooh.
about it, but I don't recall off the top of my head. Seriously, let us know in the comments if you know that story. And just let us know in the comments in general how much you like Barbie and maybe what you think the themes are. But Jen, you don't have to let us know in the comments what you think the themes are. That's our last category. Fair to say that she wears the themes on her sleeve. I mean, this isn't a movie that you have to dig really deep to figure out the themes. I think it's very self-aware and it traverses its themes really well.
I was really enjoying when Barbie and Ken went to the real world and their first encounter was with the crowd watching them come through on their rollerblades and crazy outfits. And Barbie's response is immediate trepidation and fear and anger, as well when she's being ogled. Meanwhile, Ken feels validated and almost grateful. Like I'm finally where I'm being appreciated. And I thought the role reversal immediately upon entering the real world, where Ken is realizing, oh, patriarchy's a thing, and it elevates me to a point that I've never experienced, and I love it, and I want to bring it back. That was so telling. And then seeing how the worst aspects of patriarchy brought back to Barbie Land could truly create havoc for everyone, it seems. I loved that theme and the role reversal and how blatant and obvious that was.
Well, and I think that what's so profound and powerful about Kin coming into the real world. I hope what can happen for maybe some male listeners who haven't seen Barbie and might be considering it. Maybe it was the Lego or Transformers chat that pulled you into this episode. But if there is intrepidation about seeing Barbie, or there's even times while you're watching the movie that you don't feel comfortable in Barbie land, I think that's the point that the movie is making. That as comfortable as Ken feels in our world and is maybe as uncomfortable as certain men may feel in the Barbie world, that is shining a light in a way that I don't think a lot of movies are able to do, and sort of articulating the way a lot of females feel in the quote unquote real world. That there is this patriarchy in this, very clear sort of masculine overlay to everything, and how, for most women that just is inherently unnatural, and how just upon immediately entering again a sunny beach, you can feel unsafe even right next to your man. You can feel unsafe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Such a good point. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so glad that you brought up that point because exactly, she's right next to Ken, and the men are still ogling her, still vocally harassing her, not a care in the world. And so she does feel immediately unsafe and is upset by the fact that the real world isn't what she expected. It's the complete opposite. How incredible that one of the main themes, the men in Barbie Land, don't necessarily feel enough. They are in this not necessarily
Support.
matriarchal society because there really aren't any children there. So that's a slight part of it. But
It's tough when no one has
ultimately,
genitalia, Jen. When you're all plastic dolls. No
yeah, no children can
genitalia
be had
kids.
except for Midge, the pregnant Barbie. I loved that part too. That was hilarious. Just seeing that the roles can be reversed in this fun, interesting way. So if you sit through it and laugh through it because you will, you can take something out of it that you might not have even necessarily thought about.
What I think is the mark of a great movie is you can isolate 90 seconds, 3 minutes, and you can end up having this really long conversation about it. You mentioned that moment when Barbie and Ken come into the real world. You can really dissect that a lot because the reality is anybody who looks like anything, if you were dressed like that, people would stop and they would look. And it again calls into attention not necessarily what's appropriate or not appropriate in terms of your reaction to something, but it's just going a step beyond that to say like, hey, if even if your reaction is to naturally look at something, just be aware that that might make the person uncomfortable, and maybe it won't. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that in our culture today, and especially if a good-looking woman dresses in a way that she feels, I don't know, I don't want to say sexy, but if she feels a way where she's confident and she likes it and someone else perceives her as sexy, there is a disconnection there that it's not necessarily appropriate for the person who finds that person attractive to articulate them or even again look at them or ogle them, because if you just assume that person presented themselves that way for one reason, you could be completely wrong. Most people looking that would assume the boyfriend is being forced to be dressed that way when actuality Ken loves the outfit and he loves showing off and he feels whatever. So it
Yes.
is always played for laughs and subverting expectations, but it is still again constantly kind of being able to have a couple different conversations at once. I'll shut up because I'm having too many conversations at once. What would you give the theme, Jen? 1 out of 10.
Oh, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 all day.
You've locked in your final score, which means we have a total. I get to reveal your total to you.
Oh, you tell.
I don't always say this, but I hope some of the listeners are playing along. So you guys should lock in your score in the comment section. Jen, you gave the plot a 9. You gave the characters and performances a 10. You gave the visual storytelling a 10. You initially gave the use of sound a 7.5, but then we Goslinged it up a point and a half to a 9. And then we gave the themes a 10. That's a total of a 96. Fair to say you give Barbie an A plus? Is that what we can lock in?
It's an A plus. It's an A plus. And I'll tell you, going into it the first time 2 years ago when it came out, I never would have expected to say that. And we didn't get into that theme, but I will just say that they address the negative aspects of Barbie over the years. And I was glad that they did. I loved that.
Yeah.
It's Barbie's been controversial for a long time for good reason, and they addressed that. I loved it. So yeah, I never thought I would rate it as high, but sure enough, I did.
It was the highest grossing movie of the year domestically and globally. I think a lot of people would agree. And Jen, I'll give you my score now. To your 9, I gave the plot an 8, so pretty close there. To your
Mm.
10, I gave the characters and performances a 10. To the visual story for the visual storytelling, to your 10, I gave it a 10. The use of sound, to your 9, I actually gave it a 10. I thought
Mm.
that it sort of did everything right and then some. There are definitely tracks in this movie that penetrated pop culture and are sort of better off because they were in the movie. Like I said, there's original music in the movie, but there's also original uses of that original music. So 10 out of 10 for me. I gave it in theme to your 10. I also gave it a 10. I feel like it's really hard for a movie to be an example of what it's trying to discuss and talk about. And for a toy movie, for a branded movie to kind of elevate and become an example of what it's always tried to be, and maybe the best example of what the brand has always tried to be, I don't think you can do much better than that. Jen, your total was a 96. My total is a 96. We tied. Look
Oh,
at that. Yeah, we had the exact same score out of 100. I think that makes it official. I think that's what that means. Eat your heart out, Greta. Jen, I'm so glad that you came into the jungle. I hope
thank
you'll come back
you.
sometime. We have a merch shop on Redbubble. Our sponsor is Platinum Plastic, so you should check in there. Maybe take a look around, see if there's anything you like. Let us know.
I'd love to come back to the jungle. And I will just say also, I checked out the merch. I love it.
Oh,
There's so many cool things in there, so I'm gonna pick what I'm gonna get. But
awesome. I know you're a big fan of Sid the Cinema Sloth, as he is a big fan of yours as well.
I
Um,
am. I love all these clips that I've already heard of his. I want to hear more. So I'm into it. I'm down.
Jen, it was lovely. Thank you so much for coming. And until next time, girl bye. Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A-plus gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch. From Battleship to G.I. Joe to Trolls, it's difficult to think of a toy franchise that hasn't been adapted into a feature film. But it's even more difficult to think of movies in the subgenre with something to say. Barbie elevates playing with dolls into conversations about identity through the female lens, and the Lego Movie skillfully balances themes of creation with the power of play and how it can help repair communication between generations. So, what themes did the title Transformers inspire in director Michael Bay? Let's ask casting director Michelle Lewitt.
They talked about how hot Michaela was going to be. We talked about finding literally the most gorgeous 18-year-old there is out there, which I think we did.
I think we did.
I think we did.
Transformers was initially adapted into a feature-length animated film in 1986, so fans of the brand were eagerly anticipating the 2007 live-action release, but the filmmakers seemed to resent the source material more than they found inspiration in it. The characters are all funny at times, but few are likable, and outside of Bumblebee's radio, none of the robot heroes have any personality, or at least redeemable ones. I feel like there's a much better version of the film, where Megan Fox's Michaela is the main character, trying to mend a damaged relationship with her father, transforming the young heroine from a teen daughter concerned with boys to a young adult who is responsible for the health and safety of her parents. My good friend and Autobot expert, Sid the Cinema Sloth, has slowly made his way into the studio and joins me now to score the film. Sid, are you eBay user ladiesman217?
I'm actually ladies man 128.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
now I really
so-
feel silly. Well, hey, man, thanks for coming back. I'm really excited to have you here, and I'm excited to have you to talk about Transformers with me because for people listening, they should know Sid, pretty big Transformers fan generally of the brand. When you were a
Sure.
young sloth,
Yes,
you had
yes.
Transformers, you played with. Maybe you could enlighten us a little bit about your relationship with Transformers pre 2007.
I remember those toys were the kind that kids would bring to school, and everyone just wanted to get their hands on them and just transform them. You know, it's just so much fun.
Did you have a
And so-
favorite?
Oh yeah. Probably Soundwave was my favorite when I was a kid. There's one of the weird things was that a giant robot could transform into a small Walkman, right?
Oh, I see. That was that was the gimmick.
Megatron could transform into a small gun that they would
Very
hold.
practical.
So they were real fun to play with, and then the cartoon was great. You know, I loved cartoons from back then because they were like, it's like they're I guess they're for kids, but there's a lot of killing. I was just definitely a fan of Transformers and the first generation of them, and then got older and kind of grew out of it, and definitely when the movie came out, it was like, oh yeah, like what are we gonna do for Transformers? Because I remember when the teaser came out, which is in the movie, the scene with the moon.
How old would have you been in like 2006, 2007 when they would have started promoting this?
26,
Okay.
27.
So fair to say you were of the 2007 summer blockbusters, was this kind of higher up on the radar for Sid? Were you looking forward to going to see this, or were you just sort of, I don't know, were you still a cool 26-year-old and maybe a little too cool to get excited about Transformers?
It's cooler than I am now, but I
Don't
still
say
wanted-
that, Sid. All right.
But
I think you're one cool sloth.
Hey, Daddy-O.
All right, maybe a slightly less cool sloth.
Yeah, exactly.
Only
That's what I'm
slightly.
That's what I'm telling you. You know, you see the previews and it's like, oh, they don't look anything like Transformers. You know? So I went to see it, but I had no expectations. It wasn't something that I was like, like I said, the teaser came out. It was like, oh yeah, cool. This should be cool. Then you start seeing the commercials, but I just went into it, and it's also Michael Bay, and I can't say that I'm a Michael Bay fan.
No, that really sets the groundwork. I didn't remember this being as long as it was. And then before I
No.
saw the runtime before I played
Yeah.
it, I was like, holy cow. And I really, really felt it. This
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
Was that similar for you? I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean, Chris, I mean, obviously We just built it all up. So what was your reaction in
I
2000?
know,
You
right?
see the movie. It
Yeah,
jumped
yeah,
around a
yeah,
little bit here.
exactly. Yeah.
It's so tension.
It was long, man. I remember it being long even in the theater when I
Mhm.
saw it. I mean, what is it? 200, what is the runtime?
224. The movie starts out with a young Sam Witwicky played by Shia LaBeouf. He's he's in class. He has some glasses. It's sort of a show and tell day in college. I don't remember having any of those days when I was in college, but
He's in high school.
okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, my
Yeah. Yeah,
apologies.
so who had show and tell in high school?
An
You
even
know what I
better
mean?
point. But anyway, he's then going to buy a car from the late icon Bernie Mac.
Yeah,
Absolute
totally.
highlight of this movie, hands down.
Totally.
Sam is going to buy the car. He gets the car. Turns out the car's a transformer. It takes a while for us to actually see any transformers. I mean, I think it's
Mhm.
close to
The,
the hour mark, even
the
after, before Optimus Prime shows up.
yeah, it's this they come in the second act, the beginning, but it's like yeah, it's definitely the first act. He finally meets Bumblebee. I mean, so much time has gone on. I mean, what is it, like a third of the movie already? And it's like, oh my God, they're just now getting here. Hmm.
Well, and that's my issue. If people want to argue that the quality of this film is in the action and it's in the, the Transformer characters, then I would say, why do we spend so much time with the human characters? Why do we spend so
Right.
much time laying the groundwork for things that don't really feel natural? There's a scene when Bumblebee apparently is not offended by Michaela calling him out on being a rundown car and instead kicks them out, turns into a much better looking car, and they get in. And then seconds later, she ends up kind of getting on Sam's lap and talks about how how slick he is and stuff. I don't buy for a second that they're she's interested in him. I mean, there's not
Oh
really
yeah,
any
yeah, yeah.
real chemistry there, and we could say
No.
that for characters and performances, but it feels like nothing with the humans work, but nothing with the Transformers really works because other than us just knowing the good guys are supposed to win and the bad guys are supposed to lose, things just push forward for the sake of pushing forward.
Right. When you look at it, you're like, I mean, how is it any different the British coming to America? You know what I mean? It's like that was us, right? I mean, we're nothing to these. These guys are way more advanced. They're huge. I wouldn't call them like they don't seem to be evil in that sense. I don't know.
I am a little foggy on your stance on colonialism, Sid, if you don't mind clarifying, which
Oh, I mean,
so
oh,
you're
I see what you're
saying
saying.
the fact that Megatron has come here to try to get the Allspark and in theory destroy humanity. You can see where he's coming from, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, he's not another human living here.
Fair enough.
I don't know. Like, but they have no personality. Ironhide has no personality. Ratchet has no personality. Jazz, it doesn't even have any personality.
And there's the time to develop it.
Yeah, you're gonna have a human connection. That's fine. Like that scene when they're looking for when he goes to get the glasses. These guys are trying to stay hidden and shit, and they're walking around.
So Sam's parents have come into Sam's room
Right.
and he's trying to hide these transformers in addition to the girl in his bedroom.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
transformers are sort of hiding in the backyard.
yeah. Like bumbling idiots. Really.
Right.
That scene unnecessary. Was it even funny? It's things like that. It's like let's get the movie going. Like
Nowadays, every action movie has to be a comedy. There's more
right.
jokes than anything else. And this movie really feels exhausting in that way, where it's just constantly trying to insert jokes. Very few of them land. When your Transformers are all these giant CGI monstrosities, you can only dedicate so much screen time to them because it costs hours and hours and hours of post production of people to
Sure.
create these characters. But that still doesn't mean that the human characters can't be more compelling. So what'd you give the plot, Sid?
The plot I gave a 4 out of 10.
I mentioned it earlier in my open. I feel like this is a much better movie if Sam is the secondary character and Michaela is the main character. This is a good looking cast. My God, I don't think this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
I don't think there's a bad looking person in it. I mean, it's kind of crazy at times how unnecessarily good looking, in particular, a lot of the female characters are. And I know this is a vroom vroom car movie. It's a toy movie. Again, stellar cast. You have, we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, Bernie Mac. You've got John Turturro, John Voight. I mean,
Yeah.
just really kind of crazy some of the names
Joel
that pop up.
Joel Hornick, which is
The one and
which is
only.
Kevin Dunn, right?
Yeah,
From
that's
Seinfeld, Joel Hornick.
that's right.
So,
I
I mean,
mean,
he was great, right? He's in all kinds of things, and
you do have this sort of, I don't know, what I felt like was a really unnecessary part of the movie, which is this group of soldiers led by Josh Duhamel. He's Captain Linux, and he, again, I guess is supposed to, I'm assuming, give some more emotional weight to these sort of large stakes and the battle scenes when the U.S. military needs to come in and support. So I mean, this unit of soldiers is a real focus, and when we talk about the plot dragging, I feel like you could cut that entire group out.
I actually thought that like it was interesting with the army people in the fact that I felt like, wow, there's actually like, two separate movies going on here. I would have actually rather seen the soldiers than Sam. You know what I mean?
So you're saying you're thinking there's more of military-based action Transformers movies,
I
opposed
do.
to this sort of horny teen coming of age.
Yeah, especially okay. Michael Bay has that military connection. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I mean, Jesus Christ, he gets A-10 Warthogs, F-22 Raptors, right? He's got
He's the
the.
current Secretary of Defense for those who
Yeah,
don't know what that military connection
I know, right?
is. Yes.
GI Joe is always tied in with Transformers, the comics and then whatever. So I like the military aspect mixed in with the Transformers. You know, you have the military, and then you have the little kid and his girlfriend, and you know they know more than the military knows, and then you got the other people that know more than the military knows. What, you guys don't have your own hackers working for you? You know?
Well, that's my issue. I mean, with the
Yeah.
military stuff, is if we're talking about these characters, I mean, they're really, really cringy. I mean, at the very least, like Sam's parents, they look. There's a rhythm, there's a humor there. It's not
Mhm.
really my thing, but I get it. Again, even Shia LaBeouf, there's this intensity he brings. Megan Fox is Megan Fox, but I don't know, that whole group of soldiers. It just felt so inauthentic and cringy, and like every time, especially when they were communicating with each other and just kind of
Oh yeah.
hanging out, I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
So I mean, strictly talking about just the characters and performances, did you find those military characters more interesting or like
No.
entertaining than the other, like
No,
Sam
because
is?
I mean, no, because it's just like yeah, Tyrese and the other guy yelling at each other all the time, just shouting shit. You know what I
And
mean? It's
then
just
when
like
they getting really upset with a Spanish guy for speaking Spanish.
yeah, and that
Yeah,
was the other thing. And this time I noticed that that's the guy that gets killed by the tail right after that.
yeah, of
He
course.
gets he got pissed and they took him out.
This is not a movie that represents minorities well at all. I mean, the
Oh,
African
yeah,
American characters in this movie are just horribly represented.
yeah.
Obviously the female characters in this movie are all just sort of one-dimensional sex objects. We mentioned the soldier who speaks Spanish is just sort of lambasted for that, and yeah, it's ages like white milk, if you will. Characters and
For
performances, Sid. What do you give it?
characters and performances, I gave it a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10, locked
Yeah.
in. We're moving on to visual storytelling. It's a very
Mhm.
visual movie.
The robots like we were talking
Of
about, right?
course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He went for the ultra realistic approach. I get it, whatever. It's not my thing, but they lose all personality.
Yeah.
You know, they all look the same for the most part. It's very hard to tell facial features. It's very hard to even make out total shapes because it's just like kind of looks like masses of metal
Mhm.
stuck together. With the old Transformers, right, you had the shape of the vehicle in them, their
Yeah, you
chest.
could tell Optimus Prime with
Yeah,
a semi truck.
that's one of the reasons I feel like they lost their personality.
It's what Peter Cullen does the voice of Optimus Prime, and
Yeah,
it's very distinct. But the other ones are again
right. Oh
totally
yeah,
forgettable.
and Jazz was originally, I think, in the cartoon done by Scatman Carruthers,
Oh
who
wow.
did Hong Kong Phooey, and I think he did Merrill Ark Lemon on Scooby Doo, and he was great. So I
Let,
hear
let us
that
know in the
voice.
comments your favorite Scatman Crothers,
Yeah,
character. Shout out The Shining.
but he had no personality. You know, I mean, it's like you're taking over the great Scatman Carruthers. You know what I mean? And he had like 3 lines. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a Michael Bay movie. This is if Michael Bay is an auteur, and I do believe in many ways he is a visual auteur, this is very much in his style, and he is technically very much a master. Uh, the visual storytelling in this movie is strong. Like we said, you mentioned a minute ago with the production design of the Transformers. They're difficult to read. They sort of have these weird robotic faces that just somehow can't emote despite all the detail.
I don't think they did a great job, like I said, with personality, with the way they looked, but everything actually looks really good.
Last year, a movie came out, Mad Max Ponderosa, um, the prequel to
Yeah.
the big Mad Max movie that people actually liked. I remember seeing the movie and it was looked horrible to me. It was shockingly bad how bad the movie looked. It's amazing to me that in 2007 the visual effects really do hold up. I mean, I would argue that 2007's Transformers looks better than a Mad Max Furiosa. I would argue that it looks better in many ways than 2005's Fantastic Four. There's a technical quality to this that does work, even if you don't like the design and the production design of the characters, they do still very much look like they're in the space. Just the actual transforming to and from cars is done very, very seamlessly. The
Yeah.
textures,
Yes.
the materials.
For the Autobots, it's kind of funny. For the Autobots, I go like this. I go, eh. Why? I don't know. You got that new Chevy Camaro. That's great, right? You got a Pontiac Solstice. You got the Peterbilt. You got a Hummer, big GMC truck, and it's just like, all right, that's fine. I mean, then you got the Decepticons, and you've got jets. You got the Raptor. You got the Sikorsky helicopter.
Now we're
And then
talking Sid. Now Sid's
yeah,
into it.
right.
Yeah.
And then you've got Devastator and Bone Crusher, and you also have Frenzy. And I'll tell you,
For
are you
those of
familiar?
us who might not
Yeah.
be familiar with those characters,
Okay. So Devastator was what were the Constructicons were a group of 6 construction vehicles, right? And they formed Devastators, big giant robot.
I
Okay.
see. Okay, sort of like a Megazord, if you will.
Right. So I don't, I feel like here we are. They got the movie Transformers. We're making the movie. We got to get all these different characters in. How are we going to do that? Who knows if it's going to be a sequel or not at that point. So like, I feel like they just combined them all and made it a tank and called it Devastator. Later on they had the Constructicons come out in
Okay.
one of the sequels. The same goes with Bone Crusher. He was actually a Constructicon, and they just turned them into the one vehicle.
Which was what
So
was that in the movie? Was that a cop car?
that was it was actually that big weird looking. It's a minesweeper, had a big claw on the front of it.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
Yeah, they took a bunch of these characters and tried to like Frenzy's another, right? You had Soundwave who transformed from a giant robot into a little tape recorder. Okay. But he also had tapes in his chest that would come out and turn into little robots.
Hmm.
Frenzy was one of those little robots. He was the radio at first, the boombox.
Yeah.
So there's your connection there. He instead of a tape, he's the actual boombox. I felt like that's just kind of what we were gonna get for Soundwave. And I think he shows up in one of the other movies as like a satellite. And then the Allspark, okay, which I also kind of feel is kind of like a character a bit. In the cartoon, the original cartoon, there were energon cubes, and there were these things, the energon cubes, and that's why they were at the planet. They were stealing energy, and so again, I kind of feel like they're taking little bits of the source material, different aspects, putting things in the chest, the matrix of leadership from the original cartoon movie, and then they just kind of like did a conglomerate into one thing, called it the Allspark. Mm, I don't know. I'm like, don't do that. Like, don't take 3 different things and cram it into one thing because you're hoping to get it all into one movie. I don't know.
What is the point of that to service? I mean, are they thinking that there's going to be a portion of the fan base that appreciates that?
Exactly. And you just see, oh, okay, they're kind of making a new character as a combination of these characters, and it's like I don't want to see that. I want to see this character. You know what I mean? And if you're not going to put them in, just don't put them in.
Sure,
Don't
sure.
don't do it.
Yeah, there seems to be a real, I don't know. Again, I did mention in my open kind of a resentment for the source material. They didn't seem to want to lean into those looks. This is still very much an era where, I mean, you're what, 7, 8 years removed from like the original X-Men movie, but it's still very common for the thought process to be we have to completely transition this look to the big screen. You can't just take what people like and do a live action version of that, which we've
Right,
seen is
right.
extremely successful, but
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
but
I
this was
know.
still during that era where
Yeah.
you for some reason Optimus Prime has to look like an actual alien more than he looks like a truck. The director of photography for this was Mitchell Amdusen. Very good chance I'm saying that wrong. Uh, he
Muncie?
definitely is a big budget guy. He did Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, some other big things. But the reason I'm shouting him out, Raising Arizona.
Yeah, I see that.
Shot Raising Arizona. How fun is that?
That is
How
cool.
many connections can you make between Transformers and the Coen Brothers classic Raising Arizona? And
Ooh,
I
John
wonder if
Turturro.
there's a world where a young Nicolas Cage plays a Sam Witwicky. I don't think that's
Mm,
bad casting. That could be
mm.
fun.
No, I think the Jesus could be Sector 7.
Another connection. Now we just need Holly Hunter to play Michaela, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we're good. Sid, the rules dictate you have to lock in a score for the visual storytelling. 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
What's it going to
I
be?
gave it I gave it a 9 out of 10.
That brings us
Uh-huh.
to use of sound. Sid, you clearly watched the cartoon when you were a little sloth. Did you was there any nostalgia when you were watching the movie that was brought back that you felt like you got in the cartoon? Because I can't imagine when I listened. This is a very 2007 soundtrack to movie.
Yeah.
I have an original track by the Goo Goo Dolls. They were commissioned to do one for this.
Not really. But you have the sound of them changing, which is cool, It's like other than that though, I wouldn't say there was any nostalgicness or feelings of that towards based on the sound of it. No.
And I
No.
know Sid, you're not necessarily on social media as much as some of other of us, but the end
Just
of
don't get
this,
the reception in the trees.
it's tough. Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm in my den and I gotta get up.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah,
and
the
I'm usually using my hands to hold on for dear life.
of course.
It's hard to text. Yeah.
I'm not giving you a hard time. I only bring it up because there's a bit of a kind of a meme, if you will, now that the kids are using where, somebody might have a fall or something might happen, and then they cut to the credits of this movie with the Linkin Park song, playing. And it's pretty often that you see that. So I have to mention for the use of sound that it does live on in a weird way.
That is
But
funny.
I'm curious, what would you give it out of 10?
I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Love it. All right. Well,
Yeah.
that brings us to the use of theme. I think there are a ton of opportunities when you look at the word transformation and you think of a 2 hour 20-minute plus movie, how many themes you could explore. I felt this movie was really absent of that. Am I wrong? Did I miss something, Sid? Is there anything going on here that Al didn't see?
Yeah, unfortunately not. For themes, I don't have a high score for theme either because it just doesn't seem like there, necessarily is any real themes. I mean, what? Goodwill prevail. It's very, I mean, there's more than meets the eye. Is that a theme?
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe again, you could say that's the case with Michaela. I mean, she's definitely looks like just a very beautiful girl. You might not
Yeah,
assume that
she gets a little bit more as far as like as
she's a
far as
mechanic and she
she's
has
the
these
mechanic
skills.
and she's got that, but
Let's face it, you wouldn't expect a 17, 18-year-old girl who looks like that to be able to fix your car. So maybe a little
no.
bit more than meets the eye there. Michael Bay kind of
Yeah.
does his thing in this movie, and by does his thing, I mean doesn't really do anything other than, have some really good-looking people run away from some big shiny things. What'd you give the theme 1 out of 10?
I gave it a 4 out of 10, which I almost feel like is too high. I
Well,
almost want, I almost want, well,
I mean,
yeah.
I gotta lock it in,
I'm
Sid.
locking in at 4.
You're
You know,
locking in a
locking in at
4.
4. Yeah.
Let's run it back then. You gave the plot a
Yeah.
4. You gave the
Yeah.
characters and performances a 5. You gave the visual storytelling a 9. You gave the use of sound an 8. You gave the theme a 4. That brings you to a 60, an overall 60. Again, most alma maters would call that an F. Here in the real jungle, we go in
Yeah.
chunks of 20. So that's a C in our book. Are you comfortable calling Transformers a C?
I thought of it looking at like a B, like it was a B movie. I don't mean like a B movie, but rating it. But is that too high? Why did I give it a B? I gave it a B because it's ridiculous, but it's because the A-10 Warthogs in it. It's because I get to watch the scene with that. Because it's got the F-22 Raptors, because it's got just cool military shit that I want to see in movies.
No, Sid, this is
Yeah,
why we have you on. This is the perspective
yeah,
we need. It's a 60 out of 100. That's what you scored it. But because it's got the Warthog, it's got some cool
yeah.
vehicles in there, we're locking in a B, not a B minus, not a C plus. We're giving it a B.
No, give it a B. I give that movie a B.
Well, hey, it's locked in.
Yeah.
It is giving it a 60. It's giving it a B. I gave the plot a 3.5 to your 4. I gave the characters and performances a 4 to your 5. I gave the visual storytelling an 8.5 to your 9. I gave the use of sound a 7 to your 8. And I gave the themes a 3 to your 4. So I was
Wow.
just
Yeah.
trailing right behind you there,
Yeah.
Sid. I gave it a 52 out of 100. And I gave that a C overall.
I'm happy though with the being a C. I get that.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that
don't
gives
expect
us
everyone to get as excited over the warthog as I
this
do.
old city does.
Yeah. But there's
Well,
also an Austin Healey 3000 in it. Anyway,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like we're about to get like a tool man, like ha 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 out of here or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. I mean that's the one the dad's driving, the 1961, the old school one, man.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
beautiful car.
Well,
But
seriously, let us know in the comments what your favorite vehicle was in this. This is definitely a gearhead movie. Let us know what your favorite Transformer is. Do you agree with Sid and I? Do you think we're crazy? Was there something we missed? Maybe there's a theme we're overlooking. But please let us know in the comments. Leave a like and do yourself a favor. Check out the show description. There's a link to our merch shop. Sid the Cinema Sloth has a beautiful shirt, so you should go over there and check it out. That particular design is available, I believe, on over 40 different items. All sorts of things from lapel pins. I think you can get a Sid the Cinema Sloth mouse pad. I mean, there's, guys, lots of Sid the Cinema Sloth fans. I know it. So go over there and get your merch now. Thank you again for coming as always. And before you go, I gotta ask, will you come back again? Will you watch something else with me, Sid?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I
That
will.
that Michael Bay is how you build dramatic tension.
Yeah.
Sid, hang in there, buddy. Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll. This review is brought to you by Post Wrestling, your trusted destination for pro wrestling podcasts, breaking news, and honest reviews on everything WWE, AEW, and beyond. Want to stay in the loop? Just search Post Wrestling on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Like Transformers and Barbie, the Lego Movie takes a brand beloved by millions and attempts to inject humanity and character into what was only seen previously as plastic. You could probably create a distinct spectrum by putting Barbie on one end and Transformers on the other, but where does Lord & Miller's 2014 Lego Movie land? I'm happy to report that this animated comedy musical is packed with jokes, quality performances, outstanding visuals, and an unnecessarily deep theme in the best way. 11 years later, and with several successful franchises under their belts, the team of Lord & Miller built a foundation with this film that will likely stand as long as minifigs walk the earth. It's rare for a movie to switch between animation and live action, and not since someone tried to frame Roger Rabbit have I seen such seamless use of the technique used to such profound effect. A small part of me would like to think that Will Ferrell's character from Barbie is the same character in the Lego Movie, and that little boy who taught his dad to let go helped a grown-up little girl meet her hero. I may have named the Lego Movie my pick for best film of 2014, And it's not difficult for me to stand by that claim today because the picture is aged as well as the product itself. I can confirm that everything is indeed awesome when Toronto's own and co-founder of Post Wrestling, Wei Ting, is in the house. Wei, come with me if you want to not die.
Hey, Al. It's a pleasure to be here in your home environment.
I have frequented the post office a few times myself, but it is very nice to return the favor and bring you here into our digs.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So you got some beautiful bushes and some great trees.
Oh,
Really nice, really, really nice. Love what you've done with the place.
you're too kind, Wei. You're too kind, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today's episode because this is one of my favorite movies, and I know in addition to being, a cinema enthusiast, you're also a Lego enthusiast. So I'm curious, did you see this movie when it first came out in 2014?
I did, and it's actually quite interesting thinking about it even back then. I happened to be in a time in my life where I wasn't into Lego. And I almost feel like it's a part of my identity now, where like I frequently talk about it on the podcast I do, and it's all over, my house. But what is this now? 12 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
I was completely out of the hobby. I was not really into it. Obviously, we all have nostalgic feelings attached to Lego from when we were young, and that was about as much interest as I had in it. But it was honestly something I rushed out to the theaters to see. In fact, I think I took somebody out on a date, and this was just sort of a random movie we decided to watch. And I didn't really have that much sort of like attachment to it, honestly.
sure.
Um, but it kind of brought me back into the hobby
Wow.
in a big way. Yeah, it did.
So, did you see this movie and then wait, what was the gap of time between you watching this movie and going out and buying a Lego set? Are we talking like hours, maybe a couple months?
It had to have been honestly maybe a week or like less, honestly. What was great about it was like they released like a really cheap set. I'm talking like $12, I don't know, $15, which is unheard of these days. But
Yeah.
it was like a $15 set that contained the double decker couch and basically the entire like main cast. And I
Wow.
was like, okay, this is like way too like I watched the movie, liked the movie, and I want a little souvenir. And that really cheap set that presented great value as a sort of like take home representation of the movie was ultimately, I think, the one of the things that brought me right back into it. And now they've sucked, thousands of dollars from me since then.
So it worked.
Yeah.
Well, as is the case on the show here, we break down the movie and we talk about it in five different categories. The first category is plot, and one of the things I want to kind of bring up right out of the gate is the idea of play and how the Lego movie kind of traverses this because in other toy movies like Barbie, I feel like they do a really great job of taking the act of play and integrating that into the story, whereas the Lego movie seems to take a slightly different approach where if you grew up playing with Legos, there's tons of fun, there's tons of things that you'll see, but it's more about the immersion of you going into the play, if that makes sense, as opposed to necessarily recreating the act of physically playing with Lego. It kind of takes you in the world. Once you've built something, you're now driving that car, you're inside of it. And for me, I really appreciated that because as a little lion who grew up playing with lots of Lego, that it kind of bridges almost a logic gap that can't be bridged when you're physically playing with it. I'm curious if you appreciated that.
So I'll say like something that was completely resonant with me in watching this film was that it to me represented exactly how I played with Lego when I was a child. Like I had a little city that I just kind of like, had constructed in my house. And I would just like have my own set of main characters that I would just take on these like random adventures in various parts of the city. I think that's exactly what this movie is. We are seeing an episode, through the mind of a child. Um, and we're seeing basically a child's extended state of play, incorporating sort of like various influences from his real life, that being, the influence of his dad and the sort of confinements of his dad's restrictions on his play. I thought the concept was brilliant. And I think for me really heartwarming because it was almost a direct representation of how I used to do it. It's a commercial for the biggest toy brand in the world, multi-billion dollar corporation, right? So going into it, I don't think I certainly I wasn't expecting any sort of like critical take on capitalism, which is essentially kind of like what these directors were able to somewhat sneak into it. Maybe not so direct, but like you had a direct sort of like parody of basically like a major corporation like an Amazon in Octane, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you have like what is essentially a criticism of people who blindly follow just the sort of like expectations of society in Emmett, right?
Oh yeah.
And how this movie was essentially able to make him break out of that sort of thinking and into a more independent and critical thought thinking. And that's something I certainly didn't expect the Lego movie to entertain.
This in many ways, because you can put it in the category of a toy movie, you can put it in the category of a kids movie, but this really did elevate that genre or subgenre because there's sort of everything before the Lego movie and there's everything after it. And the distinction is the thoughtfulness, the ideas, the themes. And you're right, capitalism is a big theme that this discusses. I mean, it very clearly takes shots at sort of corporate run pop music, and
Mhm.
that's a big theme in there. Just the whole idea of creation, meeting your creator, what that means. I mean, this movie has incredibly deep themes and deep thoughts, and it's so smart and funny. I appreciate it for that. You mentioned Barbie. I think Barbie is definitely influenced by this movie. I think it goes without saying that this movie walked so the Spider-Verse could swing. I think stylistically, a lot of the choices they're making in that are supported by successful style decisions made in this movie. Clearly the same group too, but yeah, I think this movie had a really, really big impact on the way, like I said, not only kids movies, but toy movies are made moving forward and what the expectation is. And again, I'll jump to the end because I really appreciated the decision of coming into the real world, bridging the gap and coming full circle on what the characters mean and what play is. And
Well, I mean, it's a big reveal. I think if you're watching throughout the movie, there are hints that what we are watching actively might be the state of a child's mind as he's going through his dad's or just a sort of
sure,
like play space, right? And we get hints of like the portal, which we end up finding out is a long sort of like carton tube.
right.
And then the various sort of like lands are I guess just different sections of these sort of like grouped together themes that dad has separated within the basement. Cloud Cuckoo Land is the box of random like parts that he's reserved only for his kids because his perfect city should not be touched by the children. So I mean I thought that was obviously something that tied the whole thing together and gave a great sort of like Wizard of Oz type of reveal towards the end. If you know the voice of Will Ferrell, I think it's one of the most unmistakable voices, right?
Yeah.
To just see the face in the flesh, I think also gave a great sort of like big wow factor, and I also think satisfyingly tied up all the sort of like themes of this, which is essentially a father losing his innocence through his like sort of desire for organization and rule following as an adult, questioning or just contending with whether or not that's certainly the best way to have a relationship with your own son and who is still
Yeah.
very like free thinking and innocent.
Yeah, I took it as this sort of message that play should always be sort of childish and you can grow up and you can take play with you, but you don't necessarily need to try to make play more adult. And the idea that he's always clearly done this. I mean, yeah, the Lego city he built, I mean, it is pretty impressive. I think any of us Lego heads would love to would be very, very envious of a space like that. But the idea that he has sort of evolved his blade to be this very mature, rigid adult thing, so much so that he's separating from his children, which
Mhm.
the act of play that should be the opposite of that. And so, yeah, very heartwarming message in the way it sort of culminates at the end. I gotta ask you then, Way, 1 out of 10, what would you grade? What would you score the plot? Just the plot specifically. If you have to give it 1 out of 10.
8, solid 8 out of 10.
Solid 8. All
Yeah.
right, locking it in. No super glue, but locking it in. Next up, that brings us to characters and performances. Clearly, you enjoyed these characters. You got their minifig shortly thereafter. But yeah, you mentioned we have Will Ferrell, we have Chris Pratt bringing it in. Elizabeth Banks is Wild Style, the sort of heroine in the movie. Alison Brie is Unikitty. I was actually surprised. I didn't realize that when I looked at the cast. I that we had her. I'm assuming a modulated voice, and then of course Will Arnett as Batman, as the boyfriend Batman.
My favorite Batman that's
Oh,
ever been on screen. Come
couldn't
on.
agree
Can't
more.
take it.
And then a fun little Charlie Day in there. Only a few lines, but he plays one of the characters, Benny. Your thoughts on the characters and performances, Wes?
I love them. I mean, this was really at a time when I think Chris Pratt was like on the come up, and I, you know, obviously on screen he's kind of become, like a very deserved A-lister sort of leading man. But even in voice, I thought he like here before Mario certainly, but like in this, I thought he was great. He sounded like a. I've always thought your voice sounded just like his. Al, like I've always thought Al's voice sounded just like Chris Pratt's. Do you ever get that?
I have a few people have told me I don't hear it. But I think that's just maybe after listening to the episodes of this podcast I'll hear it more. But I don't hear it much. But I have heard that before. But I will say this: watching it this time, because this was not the first time I watched the movie, I did have a lot more appreciation for sort of the range and the in sort of that he brought to it, because I just sort of remembered it being pretty straightforward. But there are a lot of little moments.
I think what makes him work is that he needs to be like I would say a leading man of sorts. You at least his type of leading man for this movie, you need to have a voice that sounds at once generic, but also can be I guess special. If you wanted it to, and I think he fulfills that pretty well. I thought like for me, what really stands out is this was a voice acted, cartoon movie that felt like it had a lot more life to it. And I think for me that's because it felt like these were actors actively playing while they were recording.
Yeah,
And I know that a lot of improvisation was done in the voice booth that they then later animated, which gives, what is otherwise a very rigid format in this sort of like, animation style. It made it feel much more organic, you know.
totally. No, it sounds like everybody's really having a good time, having fun, and that's I don't know. I think that's a really key component when you have a movie like this. Like I said, where at the heart of it, it's all about play, and you need that that dynamic where you can hear it in their voices, you can hear the fun, and I agree. It feels very it feels fresh and it feels fast. It has that very Lord and Miller style to it, and
Totally.
yeah. Well, much like plot, 1 out of 10 characters and performances. And
I'm
now
gonna
that
give
you've
it
locked in the 8 for plot, you can kind of base everything off that 8. So the question
sure.
is, are the characters and performances better than the plot?
I would say just as good. I'm gonna also go 8 out of 10 for this, especially for Liam Neeson's good cop, bad cop, who apparently did all of that switching back and forth
That's
live and in
amazing.
person. Yeah. I
How
believe
could I not bring up Liam Neeson's good cop, bad cop in the cast? Yeah, what a such a funny performance.
oh my God. Apparently the directors like expected him to record those lines separately, and then he just went in the booth and just did both of them and preferred to do them like live back and forth himself, which is hilarious. Yeah.
Amazing. And what's funny is he's getting so much credit this summer because he's Naked Gun has just come out. I feel like there's all these people saying, "Oh my God, it's amazing to see him doing comedy for the first time." He's done comedy before. Lego Movie,
Hmm.
12 years ago. Such
Yeah.
a funny performance with a lot of subtlety. Well, the 8 is locked in. That brings us to visual storytelling. Pretty visual movie, the Lego Movie. I have some thoughts, but I will reserve those. What was your reaction to the visual storytelling in Lego Movie?
Well, I mean, for me, this was like, you know what, I would say, like a fucking bomb on my nostalgic senses just seeing, I think, this entire world. Now, this is all CGI, but like in doing the CGI, much like I think their approach to recording these sort of voiceover lines and making them sound as organic as possible, they took a lot of effort to make sure the CGI looked like as real as possible, meaning respecting the limitations of the way Lego pieces and Lego figures actively move. Now, Lego has done a lot of like sort of animated
Sure.
movies on their own, but they would always have like characters that look like Lego pieces, but would just like be able to bend their arms, be able to like, I don't know, like rotate their bodies three like 180
Kind of
degrees, which is just
rubbery almost, yeah.
like it's just not possible, right? And it just does not. It takes you away from the immersion that what you are watching might actually be stop motion, might actually exist in real life. They took a different approach to it in that these arms can only move up and down, and but even in doing that, they're able to make them express like exactly, I think, the type of emotions that they wanted to. Not only that, but they went into the detail of making sure that the sort of molding lines in the
Yeah.
plastic was seen, the scratches and dents, that would be present on a kid's sort of well used Lego pieces. Like those were all made sure to be seen. So I really appreciated that sort of respect to detail and realism, which coupled with just this sort of like wondrous world that they were able to present in various landscapes, I absolutely loved.
I completely agree there, and we talked about earlier how the movie transitions into the real world later, and that can imagine how jarring of a task that would be if you're trying to create this really visually enriched sort of CGI look, and then you come out. But it's not so jarring because while we're in the CGI world, if you want to call it that, the Lego world, it's incredibly fantastic and colorful, but like you said, the detail, the lighting, the textures, it feels so real at all times that when you leave that world, there's not that big of a gap. And there's little like when Emmett's character, the Chris Pratt Lego character, is in the real world, and you just clearly see it's just a Lego character they've thrown down. There's, it's almost like the Toy Story thing where he doesn't look alive. There's definitely something different, but when we're back
Hmm.
in the Lego world, it doesn't seem like it's a completely different character that's now been animated and brought to life. I really, really appreciated the detail in all of the shots. And this is such a funny movie when we talk about visual storytelling. It also kind of encompasses the edit. There's such a great rhythm to this movie too, and the jokes all land. The jokes just keep coming. I mean, there's so much humor in this, but it does kind of know when to slow down and be funny. I'm sorry, and be emotional. I think it's a great point that they really respect the physics of the
Yeah.
uh, of the Lego characters. So I did just want to mention before I get your score that we are sponsored by Platinum Plastic. They're our friends. They do all of our merch. They have a real shop merch shop on Redbubble. And we have a Lego movie design up now. It is a Freedom Friday design, but don't worry, it still lets everybody know that it's still on a Tuesday. But it's a great design. You should go check that out, as well as leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite scene in the movie was. Tell Wei what your favorite Lego set is. Then leave a like. Now that all that's out of the way, Wei, visual storytelling, 1 out of 10. What would you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think I've like watched this movie so many times, and that's because I've just felt a craving to like study every scene, every frame. Mainly because I'm such a nerd to just see like, build techniques and like Easter eggs that they managed to cram in the background. And but I just think every scene that they've shot is beautiful in many ways. So 9 out of 10 for me.
Well, next up we have use of sound. This movie, I mean, uses sound. Its sound is a crucial part of the plot of the story. What were your thoughts?
I'll be honest, like sound isn't necessarily something I pay as much attention to. I think it's just something I just like feel. And I I felt it did a very strong job. I think it had a soundtrack that was very whimsical and playful, much like, its story. I thought it was effective, is about as much as I could say for it. What do you think?
Well, I appreciate it. I would go as far as to say it's a little more than effective just because it does have original music. And I know a lot of movies have original music. That's not saying all that much, but the Everything is Awesome song, I think it did sort of transcend the movie a little bit. I think it played. I think it helped the movie. It did get an Oscar nom, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
So this category did get high points for me because I felt like from the initial sound design, it does a really good job of putting you into a world that, let's face it, none of us have been in unless you're an inch tall. From a music standpoint, I thought it really hit and really does well. And even the Everything is Awesome song, what's presented at the beginning is just this sort of pop song that everybody likes. You figure out by the end that it's actually more of this piece of propaganda, and so it's like
Hmm.
almost its own character in the movie. But then at the same time, the Elizabeth Banks character, who's like the ultra hipster badass, she sort of reveals that she likes the song, and I think we all have that moment where at least the hipster in this lion has sometimes had to pretend he didn't really like a pop song that much when in actuality he gets home and he starts rocking out to it. So I felt like the use of sound in this was really really superior because, like I said, it actually takes one of the main tracks and turns it into a character. And even when we think of other famous scores from Jaws to Interstellar, the music isn't actually a character in and of itself. Whereas in this movie, I think it becomes that. So wait to reveal my score, but I did give it pretty high points. What would you give it 1 out of 10?
Yeah, I guess I would give it an 8 out of 10 as well. It's sort of my default score when I actually like something, but
Sure.
but to your point, I mean, that song in itself is almost like they had to kind of straddle this fine line between something that is essentially a parody of a really annoying pop song, while also like I guess being listenable enough that you might actually want to listen to it and put it on repeat and having it not be so completely obnoxious that like you'd want to actively turn it off. By the way, the score by Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo and Rugrats theme fame.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna pick, I guess playful but also weird and meaningful, they certainly chose the right guy.
Oh yeah, and what a great achievement. Well, that brings us to theme. We both already mentioned we were a little maybe surprised on our first screening just how thoughtful this movie is. If you had to, I don't know, maybe identify a theme or two that clearly stands out to you, what would you identify those themes as, and how effective did you think they were?
I would say, for me, one of the themes is like, I guess in maturing and in growing up, we are, I guess, from the moment we enter school, well, from the moment we're born, really, uh, we are taught to follow instructions. We're taught to follow rules. We're taught to follow, just the right way of doing this. Taught to follow order and structure, and um it's it's easy to get too into that, and there's something that I think we should be striving towards retaining from having freedom to just not follow directions and to just let our minds free of I don't know, fitting things into certain boxes or groupings and just playing.
Yeah.
And so it's a strong reminder of that, and certainly to not to take a kid's toys too seriously, which is I can be very guilty of.
I have a feeling you're going to give it an 8, but I'm curious, does this maybe get higher marks? Because it is a mere kids movie, but it brings the heat.
I'm gonna shock you, a 9 out of 10.
Wow, I am indeed shocked. Now, to be fair, you did give the visual storytelling a 9, but nevertheless. Well, we have all the scores locked in, Way, which means I can run it back. You gave the plot an 8. You gave the characters and performances an 8. You gave the visual storytelling a 9. You gave the use of sound an 8. And you gave the theme a 9. That brings us to a total of 84. On our meter here, that's basically an A. We kind of say anything above an 80 is an A. Are you comfortable giving it an A? Do you want to lock it in? If we were maybe at someone's alma mater, this might be considered a B. What if you had to give it a Lego score? Or a Lego score? If you had to give it a letter score, what would you designate it?
In Canada, which is where the jungle I grew up in, Al,
Yes, yes.
80 plus is an A. So I'm very comfortable with that score.
All right, we're locking in an A. I'm a very kind lion, as some of our listeners have learned. I gave the plot a 10. I felt like this was the classic telling of the hero's journey, but in the most sort of unique way it could be told within the universe we're in. I almost knocked it down because, like I said, it is just that sort of retelling of the hero's journey. But I landed on a 10 because I just don't think they could have done it any better. Characters and performances, I also gave a 10. I genuinely feel like a lot of these characters, from Emmett to even the Batman, Will Arnett, definitely lived past this movie, had an impact. I think they're sort of saturated into the pop culture. And everybody, like I said, was just so funny and natural. I gave it a 10. Visual storytelling, I gave a 10. Again, I felt like this sort of did everything it needed to do. It really elevated a style we had seen before. You mentioned it earlier. We had seen lots of animated Lego stuff, but this is kind of on a whole nother level. I gave it a 10. Use of sound, I gave a 10 because, again, I felt like it did everything it needed to do. I talked earlier about how much of a character the Everything is Awesome song is. And then theme, I gave it a 9.5. And the reason I docked it just a little bit, as I talk about here on the show, I feel like for a movie to be a 10 out of 10 in theme, it sort of has to be an example of what it's talking about. And obviously, Lego Movie comes just a little bit short of that. So I gave it a 99 to your 84. I think this is a really, really phenomenal movie. If we're talking genre, I feel like it's a standout, whether you're talking toy movies, kids movies, Lord and Miller movies. So for me, it's an A plus. Way locked it in with an A. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know we were throwing out tens just like that. You know, I didn't know this was a generous space. I thought we'd be talking to a very critical film line, but you obviously backed it up with very, very strong points and strong opinion and justification. So I don't disagree with your score.
Well, I appreciate that. Sometimes I can be a little harsh. If you go over and you check out some of our Real Bite videos, you'll notice that. Some of my reviews for Fantastic Four, First Steps, and things like that, not so kind. But regardless, I feel like Lego Movies is standout. Wei, I'd love to have you back. Will you come back to the jungle sometime? Maybe watch another movie review with us?
I'll give it some thought, but the most likely answer is yes. Thank you for having me, Al.
Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from today's show. Jen Tyson and I both gave Barbie a 96 and an A+, so that's the average and the highest scoring film on today's show. Sid the Cinema Sloth scored Transformers a 60 and a B to my 52 and a C with a C+ and a 56 average. Finally, the Lego Movie scored an 84 and an A from Wei Ting and a 99 and an A+ for me with a 91.5 A average. I would love to know your scores, so please let us know what you graded each film in the comments. I want to thank my pal Sid the Cinema Sloth for hanging out today. You can support Jen Tyson by making a donation in her honor to the Florida Wildflower Foundation through the link in our description. Support Post Wrestling and its co-founder Wei Ting by subscribing to their YouTube channel, which is also linked in the description. Join me next time on episode 6, Guillermo del Toro. Lila the Sugar Glider returns to review Pan's Labyrinth. Characters welcomes Justin Tyler is back to score Pacific Rim, and returning from the Emerald Isle to review The Shape of Water is Neil Flanagan. Thank you to the Real Digital team for producing this episode and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, you're running out of time. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Note to the filmmakers, Margot Robbie is the wrong person to cast if you want to make this point.